Hi everyone, it's Sam, NFTstatistics, and this is your Proof Daily NFT Countdown. I'm going to dive into the Squiggle situation, which I talked about this weekend on a video that I recorded while I was driving, but I'm going to go in more detail here with a little bit more imagery around it. Also talk about the NFT market as well as FriendTech market, give some stats there. Let's dive right in, starting off with a quick market overview. Overall, ETH volumes were up a fair bit, up about 50% from where they were over the weekend. Still in this kind of lower range relative to the history, but nothing new there. In terms of was it the good or the bad type of volume, if you look at Blur over the past 7 days, more than 80% of the ETH volume has been sellers selling into bids. So generally not the kind of volume that tends to be good for prices. And you can kind of see that here. Prices have been largely flat, down a small bit. Did have some strength in captains, though, up about 7%, and then some weakness in World of Women. I talked yesterday about how World of Women was up sharply, up to 1 ETH. Well, a lot of times when things rise fast, they also follow that with a little bit of a fall, and we saw that there. Mid-cap index still just kind of on this downward trend, had some strength in Quirkies, up about 15%, and then weakness in Sprado Gremlins. One thing I wanted to look at, as I always like to look at least recently, FriendTech buy and sell volume. What you can see here, these blue bars is the amount of volume that was bought on FriendTech. The red is the amount of sell volume. And it's been 5 days in a row now where there's been more buy volume than sell volume. I think we had some weakness last week, like Wednesday, Thursday. But after that airdrop, it's been pretty positive returns that we've seen, a lot more buying than selling. If we look at the top 250 key index, they return on the top 250 most expensive keys. You can see that index is basically flat, but it's broadly brushing up against the all-time highs for where it has been. So overall, a little bit of strength in the FriendTech market. This is the ETH TVL, total value locked, according to DeFi Llama on FriendTech. And you can see that it is above 25,000 ETH right now. That is higher than Blur was when we got to the Blur airdrop. It's also higher than Blur was, after about 50 days, which is where we're at right now on FriendTech. I think there's this overall view in the market that FriendTech is the next opportunity to make a lot of money on an airdrop. People made a ton of money on the season 1 Blur airdrop, and that's driving a lot of the activity. And you can see that's starting to be reflected in the numbers. People are starting to price that in already. I think they've said that there's still a good another 4 months or so before this FriendTech kind of points total ends. So we'll see how this plays out, but will certainly be interesting and something that we will continue to track. In terms of art blocks and art projects in general, a lot of volume, 5 Squiggle trades, 5 Harvest trades. Beef Brothco continued to have a lot of volume. Let's have a look. A lot of really nice sales here. This Chromie Squiggle, a ribbed one with that pink at the end, sold for 12.5 ETH. A Harvest sold for 6.5 ETH with a dark background. There were 4 others a little bit lower, but some nice ones there. An Anti-Cyclone with this dark background, this night background, sold for 8 ETH. And then an Archetype for 10 ETH, slightly above the 8.25 ETH floor. And let's have a look at Harvest. On the back of those 5 sales, that floor price really popped off above 4 ETH. First time we've been there in about a month or so. Second thing to talk about, Bored Ape Yacht Club does a partnership with BAPE, Bathing Ape. It's a Japanese clothing brand. Here's the tweet from Bored Ape Yacht Club. It says, been a fan since way back. And you see you see the Bored Ape kind of opening those Hawaii shirts to the BAPE shirt with a Bored Ape Yacht Club right there. A little bit about this. It will make its debut with a limited quantity physical collection at Ape Fest in Hong Kong. Apes not attending will also be able to purchase pieces from the collection online, so you don't have to go there to get this. And then BAPE another NFT that's out there, those holders go next. So perhaps disappointing for BAPE who would think they'd get first access to a BAPE drop, but they will be going next. But still, very, very cool stuff to see from Garga. He said they've worked with BAPE to reimagine iconic designs from their deep archive, with one foot in their Ura Harajuku roots and the other in the BAYC swamp. Goes on, but from the Bored Ape Yacht Club founder. A Bored Ape, here is the kind of the image that they're putting on it. And for those of you who don't know what BAPE is, it is a Japanese clothing brand, pretty high end, really has prominent real estate. Again, as you know, as I've said many times, I lived in Hong Kong for 15 years. This picture on the left is their Hong Kong real estate. They have prominent, very perfect kind of Hong Kong real estate. Also a really incredible flagship store in Japan. So that's what that is. So congrats to Bored Apes on that partnership. Congrats to BAPE as well. Third thing, what is going on with Squiggles? And the reason I talk about Squiggles, I think this is one of the most interesting stories in NFTs right now. And the basic background is, if you look at the spectrum trait, there's a full spectrum and a perfect spectrum on there. One has 43 NFTs, one has 23 NFTs. Now, what's important to know is that this is actually not a trait that started in Chromie Squiggles. So Chromie Squiggles launched and full spectrum and perfect spectrum were not there. The community said, what I think would be really cool is if you took all the NFTs that have one of every single color in them and called those a perfect spectrum. And full spectrum is basically the same, but it has all of the colors plus or minus 1%. So let's have a quick look. This one on the left here is what I would call a full spectrum. The one on the right is not. And the reason the one on the left is you can see that pink is that ending color, but it's also the beginning color. Every single color is on the full spectrum, whereas on this one on the right, it ends in yellow and it starts a little bit more in green. So a few of the colors are missing. Now here is the kicker. Okay, if you actually look at the way Squiggles have been classified for the past 3 years, this one on the right was classified as full spectrum and the one on the left was not. Okay, so if you actually, these are the ones that are full spectrum, there are more, but this one right here is that one I just showed you, and that was actually classified as full spectrum, whereas the other one was not. And people saw this, they said, why does it not actually look like a full spectrum, even though it says it is? And they said that maybe it's because kind of the squiggle is facing a different direction, or you can't really see all the colors in the squiggle. Things like that were kind of run by, but overall, there was a Twitter account named Yamamoto, and you can see his profile picture right now is the only actual perfect spectrum. But Yamamoto created a website, I believe it's called squiggledata.com, where he put out all the math and said the math that has been on the Squiggle site so far, the metadata that has been created so far is actually wrong. And the ones that you're calling full and perfect are not actually full or perfect spectrums. He also created a tool where you can look at what he calls corrected spectrums, like what is the actual spectrum versus what the numbers say. Now, what was the issue? Now, there are 3 components that go into the way that the color was calculated in the past. Okay, color spread is one of the important ones to think about. Every squiggle has a color spread, and that color spread in reality has a lot of decimals to it. But if you actually look at the way it was presented as an integer. So 6.73216 or whatever was actually presented as just a 6 color spread. The reason they did that was so you could look up the color spreads, and it'd be a lot easier to say, hey, I want to find a 6 color spread instead of having 10,000 with different decimals. You actually just rounded, and it was easy to grab whichever one you were looking for. So that was the reason that they did, which was helpful for usability. It was helpful for searchability, but it wasn't helpful for calculating colors. The other thing that they have here is segment. And for various reasons, in the way that they had been calculating the metadata, the segment actually had a -2 at the end, which was, again, helpful for the purpose it was trying to achieve, but it was not helpful for calculating the number of colors in the squiggle. In reality, there were 20-something perfect squiggles. In reality, when Yamamoto actually does the math the way he does, there's only one. You can see it's this one right here, where the start color is 83, the end color is 82.59. It's pretty much exactly the 256 off by a small fraction. And then there are a handful of full spectrum squiggles, which you can see right here. These are 4 of them, and there are a bunch of other ones, but a lot of these were actually considered normal before now. So it's kind of one of the most interesting things I think happening in NFTs, because it brings this idea of, the perfect spectrum as they have been basically part of the lore, part of the way we've talked about squiggles for the past 3 years. Now and that's something the community has really rallied around and accepted. But now there's this thing called the mathematical perfect squiggle, which is really what it was trying to achieve. And we'll see how these things trade over time. I imagine that these mathematical full spectrums, the mathematical perfect, which is only one, but certainly the fulls will start to trade at a bit more of a premium. We already saw Cosmo de Medici buy one last week for 23.69 ETH, which felt punchy for something that looked like a normal squiggle. Now we understand why. So this is something that will be interesting to track, and certainly something I'll continue to talk about. Last thing to talk about, let's talk about a few notable sales, starting off with a Blue Beams Bored Ape Yacht Club. I believe this was held by EB7. This one sold for 112 ETH. If you look at prior Blue Beam sales, they've been kind of at 105. A few had been really high at that 300, 241 mark. The most recent one is this one at the lower right for 135. So 112, the second lowest that we've seen in the past year or two, but in this market, not too surprising there. Here's a Murakami Drip CloneX, which sold for 29.9 ETH. If you look at the other Murakami DNA sales, they've been at 22, 23.5, 45, 38. This one's both a drip DNA as well as a Murakami type, so perhaps that makes it more of a premium to these other ones, but still pretty nice to see a CloneX sale at 30 ETH. I don't think anybody would see that as a bad sale in this market. And then a couple one-of-ones, Nene's Limit by MattiaC. This one sold for 4 ETH, and this is another one of those pieces You got to see the full video of it because it really is kind of taking all sorts of different angles around this image right here. He says in the caption, the body has left signs, animation generated using rubber stamped artwork as tools. The process involves some pieces of software to render the artwork in 3 dimensions in order to create a slow fading. If you look at other sales this artist has had, you can see a bunch of sales kind of in that 2 to 4 ETH range. So yeah, nice sale here. I mean, huge to have a 4 ETH sale in this market. So congrats to him. And then lastly, another piece by Miss Al Simpson, this one for 2 ETH called Glamour Scammers. It was sold to the buyer Flying Beagle, who's been a big buyer of art through the bear market. So salute to Flying Beagle for continuing to support artists in this market. We talked about Al Simpson last week. She had another sale that was for 1 ETH then. So nice to see this upsale for her. The caption on this is crying dollar signs as crypto markets rise and fall, hidden identities, hiding true intentions, betting their bets on a beautiful racket. Beware the siren call of the glamour scammers. Oh, such an alluring deception. That is all from me today. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, give us a like, tell us what you think in the comments, subscribe to the channel, and we'll be back tomorrow and most weekdays with another show. Have a great day.